The quality may generally not have been as high as we all wanted, but at the very least, the Nintendo Switch got Mario sports games. Mario Tennis was never really MIA, but Mario Strikers hadn't been seen since the Wii, and Mario Golf hadn't been on a home console since the freaking GameCube, so to finally see them again was very exciting to say the least. And it means that only one Mario sports series is now still absent in the modern Mario sphere. Mario Baseball, a series of 2 games also referred to as Mario Stadium based on the Japanese name. When I was younger, I always loved these games for their crazy character rosters, with names that we are still waiting to see in say Mario Kart to this day, and here they are, playable all the way back in the 2000s. But ever since the Wii era, it has become incredibly quiet around the Mario Baseball series. Not as much as a rumor has ever emerged about it possibly being worked on, and if I can be brutally honest, it makes sense. I would not be surprised if the Mario Baseball series would never get a third entry. If there was only one obstacle in its way, sure, but there are multiple problems preventing this series from coming back. Let's start with one that might seem easily fixable, but there's zero precedent to suggest that will actually happen: the developers. So far, Nintendo has been extremely consistent in letting the Mario Sports series stay true to their developers. There has never been a Mario Tennis or a golf game that wasn't made by Camelot, and even though Mario Strikers went through a lengthy absence, when it returned it was still Next Level Games developing it. Mario Superstar Baseball was developed by Namco, which then formed Bandai Namco, and under that name Mario Super Sluggers was developed. But unlike Camelot, which basically lives off Mario Golf and Tennis games, and Next Level Games, which might not have been making Mario Strikers, but was certainly busy developing other titles like Luigi's Mansion, Bandai Namco has just kinda stopped making Mario games. During the 2000s, Namco had a close relationship with Nintendo, and received the freedom to develop the Donkey Konga series, which then evolved into the Mario Baseball series and the Mario Kart games for arcade systems. But as the 2000s came to a close, Mario Super Sluggers seemed to mark the end of an era. For about 5 years, Bandai Namco and Nintendo didn't work together much, until their partnership suddenly entered a new era, where Bandai Namco would help Nintendo out in developing huge titles. The team Masahiro Sakurai oversees as director of Super Smash Bros. Is composed of Bandai Namco employees, and every Mario Kart game since 8 on Wii U has seen involvement from Bandai Namco as well. As such, it's not like Bandai Namco has a poor relationship with Nintendo, more the other way around. They seem to have been promoted from just being the developers of smaller Mario games and instead now work on blockbuster titles. And in this time, only one Mario game developed by Bandai Namco was still released: Mario Sports Superstars for 3DS. Not only is that game already nearly 10 years old by now, it also wasn't exactly a success, and wasn't even entirely developed by Bandai Namco alone, as Camelot also chipped in and a smaller studio known as Hexadrive also played a part. Point being, unlike say Mario Tennis or Mario Golf, which Camelot definitely relies on as a huge part of their necessary earnings, there is no one at Bandai Namco thinking, we need to make a Mario Baseball game to finally make some money. But that still doesn't have to be a major problem. I mean, I don't think Next Level Games needed Mario Strikers Battle League to keep the lights on. Luigi's Mansion 3 was an enormous success, and if money was what they were chasing, pushing for another Luigi's Mansion game was probably the better bet. But sometimes you gotta try new things, see what sticks, and I think that is what the return of Mario Strikers was. But that's another major issue here. Bringing back Mario Strikers after such a long time could be seen as a risk, but the previous 2 Mario Strikers games on GameCube and Wii sold incredibly well. Now, it must be said that Mario Baseball sales are definitely nothing to scoff at either. They did pretty decently, and combined, the GameCube and Wii games sold about as much as the 2 Strikers games did. But there is more to this story. Numbers don't tell us everything in this case. You see, while the final numbers are quite similar, Mario Striker sales are fairly balanced. Strikers Charged sold about 1 million copies more than the GameCube original, which is about what you would expect from a game releasing on the super popular Wii versus the underperforming GameCube. But for baseball, the gap is absolutely massive. Mario Superstar Baseball barely cracked 1 million copies, which is very low for a Mario game. In fact, it makes Mario Superstar Baseball one of the worst performing console Mario games of all time, especially when you keep in mind that it actually sold really well in Japan, meaning it was an even bigger disappointment sales-wise in the West. But Sluggers was the other way around. It sold phenomenally in the West, more than 2 million copies in total, which is very good for a Mario sports game. But it also makes you wonder, why? Why this sudden increase? Well, the answer is quite obvious. Mario Sluggers is a very motion control heavy game. To the average consumer, it's basically a full game version of the baseball minigame included in Wii Sports, only one of the most popular games of all time. And as such, while Sluggers was a great success, seeing motion controls were a phenomenal selling point around this time, it's also now a game that kinda relied on motion controls to receive its massive sales. The GameCube didn't have that, and so Superstar Baseball didn't sell. If a hypothetical Switch version wouldn't lean into it too heavily, as that kind of game is not exactly at peak popularity anymore, would Mario Baseball still sell? I think that's a very fair question to ask, and I think the answer is worrying, looking at the numbers the GameCube game put up. Especially if we keep in mind this series is a very hard sell in Europe. To the point, Sluggers never even released in Europe. Imagine how badly Mario Superstar Baseball had to have sold to end up with that decision. The game was already translated in English and all that, and it still wasn't considered worth the effort to bring it over. Nowadays, that is absolutely not happening. There is no way that a Mario game would not be released in one of Nintendo's big free markets. That's unthinkable. But if you already know a game is gonna sell terribly in one of those free, is it all that interesting to make it? Especially knowing what Bandai Namco is working on for Nintendo these days. Well, if you still want to keep up the optimism, you could make the argument Europe isn't Nintendo's biggest market, and you'd be correct. America is, that's where the majority of sales are made, and while Japan is obviously way smaller than both other markets, that's always gonna be a market that Nintendo is gonna want to absolutely cater to. And well, those are actually the two main baseball countries in the world, so why not just make a game for those audiences and hope their love for the sport can cancel out the lack of interest from Europe? It's a fair point, and it is possible that somewhere in the Japanese office right now, that consideration is being made. But then you look up the data, and you start to worry again. In America, baseball has become significantly less popular than it was before. The fanbase is rapidly aging, barely any young people pick it up as their sport, and both the viewing numbers of Major League Baseball and the ground level number of players have decreased sharply. It's still a big sport, don't get me wrong, but it can certainly be a discouraging thing to read when you're a Nintendo marketing researcher and has to look into the potential audience for a Mario baseball game. Especially when you see that soccer, or football, is actually rapidly increasing in popularity, which could very well have played a role in the decision to bring Mario Strikers back following an absence since the Wii and not Mario Baseball. But okay, there's still Japan. And what American football is to America and soccer to Europe, baseball is to Japan. It has been the most popular sport in the country for a very long time, and it still is. But even in Japan, its popularity is decreasing. It's not falling, like you could say it is in the US, and it has a long way to go before another sport catches up, but just like in the US, younger people are just not getting into baseball like they used to. Oh, but do you know what sport is growing? Football, soccer, once again, to the point it's now the second most popular sport in the country, whereas it was fourth when Mario Strikers released in the early 2000s and undersold in Japan. The second most popular sportsman in Japan is now a footballer, Kaoru Mitoma, and Japanese players are only becoming more widespread in European football, only increasing the popularity further. So, to summarize, once upon a time, Mario Strikers and Mario Baseball were relatively equal. But since then, the company making Mario Baseball has fused with another to form a much bigger company that doesn't really need Mario spin-offs anymore. The series' biggest success only did so well because of motion controls, and the popularity of the sport itself is faltering or non-existent if you ask Europe. It really leads to the opposite question of the one I started with: why would you ever make another Mario Baseball game? Sure, it might do decently well, but I don't think decently well is the same motivation it is to Bandai Namco as it is to say Camelot, with all due respect. And in the end, that is what decides if it gets made. Sales potential. You're not gonna tell me any of those Switch Mario Sports games were made out of passion, they're made out of sales potential. And in that area, Mario Baseball's prospects are so lacking, I wouldn't be surprised if we never saw this series again. But man, am I hoping this video ages like milk. What are your thoughts on a new Mario Baseball game? Do you see it happening and do you want it to happen? Or do you struggle to see a future for the series as well? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Mario content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.